Welcome to the Deputy Reporting Basic Training session. We're just going to wait for a few more seconds to let some more people join and then get right started. Okay, we have many attendees with us now, so let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deputy Reporting Basics training session. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Felix, and I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Deputy, and I'm also joined by my colleague, Sam. Perfect. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to deep dive into the reporting basics in your Deputy account. Specifically, we're going to cover the timesheet and leave summary reports, how to use the contact tracing report, how to create custom reports using our report builder. Then we're also going to share some, general time-saving tips and tricks with you. And at the end, we're going to run a Q&A session as usual. But you can also ask your questions throughout the training. And here is how. We want the session to be interactive, so please ask your questions using the Q&A panel here in this Zoom session, which is on the right bottom side of your Zoom window. Please don't use the chat function as we can't respond to questions in the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can during the session, and we'll provide a follow-up FAQ afterwards alongside with a recording of this training session. And with that said, I'm going to give over to my colleague Sam for today's training session.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So yeah, today we'll be going over the reporting basics, but just before we jump into that, we'll just do a quick introduction to what Deputy is. So firstly, these are some of the industries that we serve. As you can see, we've got some of the brands on the right and the industries on the left. And what is Deputy, of course, is as you can see through some of the previous webinars that we've done scheduling, we've got timesheets, digital clock-ins and kiosks, team communications using the news feed. It's really good to note that we're cloud-based as well, with a ton of integrations with point-of-sale services, HR platforms, things like Xero, MYB, QuickBooks, all that kind of stuff. All right, so what we'll do is we'll jump into the Deputy reporting content, but we're actually going to jump out of this deck presentation and we're going to jump into good old Tony's flowers. So what I've done, if you can still see my screen, is I've skipped all the way past all the options that we've already touched on in previous training sessions, and we're going to spend some time on reports. Now, we'll simply start with basically talking about how what you see in your reporting kind of dashboard here is representations of data that already exists in your account. And that data would have already gotten in there because let's say that you've imported some people, or you've set up some schedules, you've established some locations, you've done some communication through newsfeed. You basically interacted with Deputy quite a lot. And after interacting with Deputy, whether it's from scheduling or whatnot, after a while, it's going to accumulate data. And so the purpose of these reports is to give you ways to visualize this data and use it to make any kind of decision business-wise in future. Now, as of recently, a big requirement is contact tracing. Now, whether you're using Counter, My Guest List, or something like that, your customers in a hospitality business or a retail environment or healthcare as well, may in some point in the future test positive for COVID. So you will be made alert of that through your checklist system. And you need to then use Deputy for this hypothetical to find out those dates and find out who your employees have maybe been in contact with the customer. Maybe they've got it themselves outside of work. But basically, you want to use the contact tracing report to find out, to do essentially contact tracing. So the first thing that you want to obviously do is think about the dates that you need to query with this kind of report. So at the top left of the screen, you'll see that you have this interactive date picker with either a custom date range or just a simple last kind of functionality. It could be yesterday, 7 days, last fortnight, et cetera, or you can just do current. And current's going to give you a few options around the fortnight pay cycle or something like that, or the week itself. But for this particular case, let's just pick this particular date. And so what we'll do is we'll pick this date range here between the 31st of August and the 13th of September. And we'll run the report. In a memento. Okay, so now that we've run the report, we'll then, on the bottom here, we'll see a list of employees that have returned on the query based on that date range picker. So what you'll be doing is you'll be picking the employee who maybe is unwell and has tested positive. And so on this list here, let's say it's this person. Once you select the employee, then you get options to either query who, in this particular case, Amy may have worked with, or filter by the same location that Amy worked in, so that it will check for all the other employees there, or the areas within that location as well. So for this case, if we hit run report, Amy has not worked with anyone in that area. So if we go to, it will always return the list of employees who may have been in contact based on the area that they worked with or the location that's been worked under. Now, this return of information can also be exportable, so it's not just a visual representation on Deputy. It can also be exportable into a CSV file, which can then be played around with, whether it's Google Sheets or Excel or any other kind of data representation that you need. Okay, so I'll go a little bit further in. As you can see at the top of the screen, I've got some sheets that we can play around with, just so I can show you what it looks like to export data to other platforms like Sheets. But I'll explore that a little further on. But yeah, so the contact tracing report will always give you a list of employees that have made contact. But what we'll do is you'll also see whenever you interact with the report button, once again, it will give you obviously the dashboard that I spoke about, but also it will show you some of the reports that you've interacted with in the past. But what we'll do is we'll go back to the dashboard, so then we can go through the rest of the reports. So next, what we'll do is we'll show you the employee details report. Now, before we actually see the full report, it's really good to note that there are a few icons that are already preloaded into the employee details. And they're just things like the birthdays, employees with missing details, like really kind of important pieces of information that you can see very, very quickly before we go ahead and view the full report, so we can do a deep dive into the data that we need to look at. Now, what we've got at the moment is it's really good to always think about what you're querying on the top left, and this is the locations. So it's ordering, or it's returning data associated with all locations in this case. So this will be probably the biggest list of employees. But if we look down, we can actually filter by not only the locations that we want to return employee lists and details over, but also the areas as well. So this is really good for businesses that are working with larger data sets and don't want to return an immense amount of information and want to be a little specific, and then download that information elsewhere. So for example, if we want to just return employees from our Sydney location or something like that, or Melbourne, as you can see, it's slimmed down that list quite a lot, so we can actually play around with that data a bit further. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go back to all locations because we don't have an immense list of employees here. And as you can see, we've got that list of employees there. We've got the locations that are being returned as well. We've got things like date of birth, starting date, termination date for archived employees, employment basis, all that kind of stuff. And like, for example, here, and alluding to a webinar that we'll do a little later on about pay rates and stuff, it'll show you the award that's associated with them too, which you can then order that information over. So another thing to really note as well is at the moment, I have it set to JobKeeper eligibility, which is really important in this day and age to identify employees that are eligible for the current government JobKeeper program, because that really helps businesses figure out how to work with coverage and expenditures and things like that in future, and also how it works with their payroll platform too. But you can just do something as simple as birthdays as well. So as you can see, I've just clicked on the birthdays list and it's returned that list of birth dates or date of births. So it's only ever good as the data that you're inputting into Deputy. So you've got to make sure that when you're in the People tab, you're setting up this information. Another one that's important is tenure as well. So you could do all tenures, but in this case, we can do under 6 months as well. So some of the newer people as well, if you want to return a list of employees that you need to do some more training with or something like that. Then we've got contact details and activity as well. So this is really important because this is going to create snapshots for you to then do more kind of things with. What I mean by that is if you wanted to just list birthdays or tenure, it's changing ever so slightly the representation or the visualization of this data. So when you go ahead and click download CSV, it's downloading that file for you with this snapshot in mind. So if I go ahead and hit save, I can go ahead and start up a new spreadsheet based on this data. And if you watch this load, you'll now see the data that I had on the screen in front of me before is now available for me to then do VLOOKUPs, do formulaic, more power user stuff later on. But essentially, you can kind of play around with this data. It's not just locked into Deputy. All right, I'll jump back in here. What we're going to do is we're going to jump away from the employee data. And we're going to go to the journal usage. So I'm going to scroll a little further down. On the left-hand side here, you'll see journal usage. There's two buttons which shows the snapshot information. So at the moment, we don't have any journal entries here. But if we go to the previous week, can we see that that's changed based on a journal entry that I put in? So what I'll do is I'll show you the report and then I'll show you quickly what it is to actually input journal entry. So just a quick summary of it. When you're doing the timesheet approval process, you can actually scroll down to the bottom of a timesheet and log a journal entry. And that actually makes data for you to then query later, positive or negative or neutral. But essentially it allows you to put in some notes. So if I go to view full report, and we look at that journal entry, you'll see that I just put the free text of the journal entry was, something like close biggest sale in company history. It's great. So that's positive. And so we can then generate reports. So again, if this becomes a behavior for your timesheet approval process, you can create really meaningful data that you can then do something with later. And which you can then print in the form of a PDF or something like that, and convert it to CSV or whatnot. But yeah, creates really, really cool data for you to actually do something with later. So we'll go back to the reports. And we're going to go to leave management. So leave management is going to give you really good summaries of people's, not only their leave, but also their balances. So at the moment, I've left these blank because I wanted to show you just how easy it is for you to edit leave balances. So you could add 8 hours based on the payroll platform that you're using, and then go ahead and hit save, and then you've kind of like updated a leave balance. Now, once you've then gone through all your employees and edited everyone's leave balances, you can actually, as you can see at the top right, you can export that. And just so you know, again, another one that you've got is the ability to change the filter for the locations if you just wanted to think about it on a location basis. So yeah, this is really, really important because it's not only going to allow you to edit the leave balances of what people have to play with, it'll also show you up and coming leave awaiting approval as well, which will affect leave balances, which is important. So as you can see, we've got, like, now that we've added 8, we've got 8 remaining. We can go ahead and hit approve leave, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, this is really, really important for anyone who's looking to think about coverage and, make sure that people are taking the right amount of leave and stuff like that around, that end of year holiday time of year. So this is a really good thing to bring up. And it also works quite well with the leave management training webinar that we did earlier a few weeks ago. So if you wanted to get more information, a bit of a deeper dive about how leave management really behaves, check out our training page. We've got a lot more information on it. Okie dokie, so we'll go back. Again, exportable to CSV, lots of things you can do with the data. Before I get into the report builder, we will kind of leave that towards the end because that is definitely more on the power user end of the reporting function, but there's some really good stuff I'd love to reiterate for you all. So what we'll do is we'll go into one of the more highly used reports, which is schedule versus timesheets versus sales. Again, the snapshot that we see here, it looks pretty busy, but we've got the rostered hours, we've got the timesheet hours, then we've got the timesheet costs, as well as the sales that we can input from, free text, or we can input it from a point of sale system or something like that. But this is always going to give us a snapshot based on the week that we're querying. So as you can see, if we want certain trends to work in a way, let's go back here. We can go ahead and hit full report, and then it's going to give us just more than the bar graph, essentially. That's going to give us the real numbers that contribute to that visual representation that we saw on the dashboard. So if we scroll down, actually, before we scroll down, I'll quickly show you again some of the buttons that you can interact with at the top of the screen is all locations. So obviously, if you want a real large, big picture snapshot of how the business is doing with all of these numbers, you're going to want to do all locations. However, you might have some location managers or system admins themselves who actually want to look at how certain locations or even certain areas are behaving with the interaction of budgets, expenditures, coverage, schedule costs, all that kind of stuff. So that's why it's really important that you actually have all these options here. For now, we'll do all locations because we want to do the big picture stuff before we get into the nitty gritty. Again, we've got the snapshot of like what period that you want to actually be looking at, because not only do you want to possibly do a large picture, all locations, you might actually want to do how the financial year is going. So you might actually want to increase the date period from 1 month to 1 whole year. That's obviously going to return far more information. So please note that if you do increase that time, that date range, it might take a few seconds because it's a cloud-based system just to return the data that you're looking for. Okay, cool. So what we also have is the employees as well. So if you just want to return this data based on one employee, you can select that here, but I've just got it set to all for now. And then we'll have a look at some of the data that you're actually seeing here. So again, just like I alluded to earlier, the representation, the report of this data is only ever as good as the information that you're giving it. So it looks like with Tony's Flowers, we've been giving it a lot of good information in regards to people's pay rates, in regards to the scheduling. So we've been, doing pretty comprehensive shifts and rostering activities and stuff like that. But as you can see, we haven't integrated the sales data from a point of sale system. But if we did, we would have that included in how the business is going with the report that we're trying to reflect. So again, you can input this data at earlier stages in the deputy experience, such as the schedule, such as the people, and the locations in integrating point of sale systems. And once you do that, then you're able to represent way more meaningful pieces of data when generating these reports. So that's why this is quite cool. And this feeds back into business insights, which is, looking to become something really cool in the schedule in future. So watch this space. But at the moment, this report is probably the best way if you wanted to, visualize all of the behaviors and all of the information that you've been feeding into Deputy. This is a really good way to basically show that off. So once we do generate the information or the snapshot that we're trying to look at, we can click on this button here and we can get a PDF of it. So as you can see, I'll just zoom in for you all. As you can see, we've got that report that we wanted. We can either highlight it, or we can use a PDF to CSV converter, which are available abundantly free online, and then we can put it into Sheets or something like that and do something with it, which is great. So again, I'll just jump right out. We'll scroll a bit further down, and we're going to do the time off schedules. So if we go to, firstly, before we go into the full report, we will see not only people's approved leave and information in regards to that, but we'll see their unavailabilities as well. So again, this is a really handy report leading up to the end of the year, where people are more likely to schedule some time off or have some unavailabilities. We can just see on the dashboard some quick little visual representations of what to expect based on the week that we're querying. So we've got some quick access buttons available there, but let's dive a bit deeper into the full report. So this one looks like a pretty busy report. There's a lot of legends here, and these are just used to help visualize things like coverage and expectations and stuff like that. It works a little similarly to how the schedule works, with the visual representations of on leave or unavailability and stuff like that. As you can see, on leave will show up as red, unavailability will show up as yellow, and then the leave requests, such as this one over here that we're waiting to approve, will show up as that kind of paler red. And as you can see, the schedule itself is there. So again, this is the snapshot. So this snapshot is based on the date filter that we have set, which is the end of September to earlier in October. And as you can see, with the unavailability is usually recurring for some people based on commitments that they have outside of work. But this helps you print that off and have a retroactive look about how certain trends are working with leave and stuff like that. But if you wanted to not just use the schedule to make coverage decisions over and instead wanted a report on it, this is the place to get it. There are a few more filters that you can add to the time off and schedules. These are the types of leave that have been input. So for example, if you just wanted to look at everyone's annual leave, then that's the filter that you would pick. Another one as well is, pardon me, is some of the training requirements that you actually have to query against it as well, which is pretty cool. But basically, again, this snapshot is really going to be handy for that end of year period where you might need to get a heads up on people's leave and want to report it in that kind of way. And again, of course, you've got the locations filters on the left-hand side as well. Okay, so as you can see, my quick access list is getting quite busy, and that's because it's remembering all the ones I've recently accessed as well. Okay, cool. So if we scroll a bit further down, we've got a few more reports to look through. But the last one on the dashboard that we want to look at is the employee timesheet locations. So this report is like the actual dashboard representation itself is basically Google Maps, as you can see. And so what we have here is these are the clock-in locations represented by the pins for all the locations that we have. And so these would be the same pin drops that we would expect people to be clocking into. If your employees are using their mobiles, there might be some variance of clock-in locations, but essentially, if we go to View Full Report, people's clock-in locations, so we'll go here, and as you can see, we've had some people clock in over in Newtown. So this report here is used to establish a radius for yourself that you could do so with the locations, around the location, and what the business deems acceptable for employees to be able to clock into their shifts. So obviously people are going to be clocking into the shift at the location that they're going to work at. And so you can set that in the location settings. But this report will reflect if people are outside of that area, or if you wanted to, get a large scale view of all the locations and all the locations for the business and all of the actual pin drops that people are setting when they're clocking in, because they can be different. So, and you've got satellite view as well if you like that look as well. So this report is really for people who, again, really want that kind of metadata in regards to that. And if we have a look at some of the other buttons, again, very similarly, if you wanted to query a particular employee or a particular location and area, you can do so at the top of the screen. But what we see right now is basically all of the data that we've plugged into Deputy. Okay, let's go back to the dashboards. 1 second. And we're going to get into the report builder. So we're going to scroll down. In the report builder dashboard visual representation, we'll have some of the previous reports that we've built. So with this one here, we have shift questions and the responses to them. And so what you would expect is a list of all the people and the questions, the shift questions that you're asking them and their responses. So what we see here is a full list of all the employees and all of the shifts that had questions associated with them. And then on the right-hand side, we have the question, have you had a break? And then obviously if they haven't answered the question at all, it's blank. And then you've got false and true responses based on what the employees have input. So I wanted to show you this because this is a custom report. It's very easy to make it, but I just wanted to then take a step back and show you how we got there. So if we go to edit report, what we might do actually is we might build one from scratch. The reason is because the first thing that you need to think about with the report builder is the type of data that you're querying. So if we go ahead and hit create new report, you'll see that it gives you a list of the structure of the data set. So if your custom report is scheduling in nature, you pick the schedule. If it's just about people and their training and their training requirements and qualifications and stuff like that, then that's what you pick. And as you can see, it does get very specific, but depending on what you pick will create the basis of the report and the data set that you're trying to query. So again, you can probably understand that the report builder itself is more suited to like the power user, so to speak. But as you can see, based on the shift questions report that we've got, it can be quite simple as well, but it can get very complicated. So if we just do a simple timesheet report, timesheet reports, if we go to edit, timesheet reports will return inherently a lot of data because it will give you basically all the shifts that worked for all your employees. So this, as opposed to a lot of the other reports that we have, has a lot more buttons. But don't be afraid, because this all just is trying to determine how broad or how specific you want the data set to return. So firstly is I'll just show you the pre-existing fields based on the data set that we picked, timesheets. These are the pre-existing fields that it's picked for us. It's got display names, it's got timesheet data, start time, end time, breaks, all that kind of stuff. But on the left-hand side, these are all of the other possible fields that you could add. Now, as you can see, that might look like a pretty basic list, but within each of these is a drop-down. And these are all of the other data points that ever exist associated with timesheet data. So for example, not only might you need to find out the award that people are working under, let's say it's GRIA or something like that. You might also want to know the pay conditions that are being invoked, whether it's an ordinary Monday to Friday, or people are working so many shifts in a week that they've now got weekly or daily overtime or something like that. You can get that information based on the timesheet fields that you're adding to this report. So it can get very heavy. And so the reason why I wanted to talk about the amount of data that any report builder report can return is when you pick that that data structure, you need to note that the maximum return for a data set for you to use filters with is 20,000. So to kind of like digress on that a little further, is the maximum amount of data points that it could possibly give you being 20,000 means that if you're adding the filter, typically your expectation of how these filters are going to work will be that if I display by name or a start time or something like that, and then I pick that filter, is you're probably going to find what you're looking for. However, if what you're looking for is outside of that 20,000 maximum return that it got, it won't find it. So that's why you need to think about the data structure first, think about the fields that you're adding, and then when you're using the filters, keep in mind that if it sits outside that 20,000 maximum return, you won't find it. So that's typically the edge case scenario as to if you'll ever not find the thing that you're looking for. We'll have a bit more information on this as a follow-up in the content that we provide and do a bit more deep dive into later, because again, we wanted to do reporting basics, but as you can see, it can very quickly unravel into advanced. So to quickly tie up the report builder, I'll show you some of the other functions that it provides. So firstly, the configurations in regards to filters or the grouping, that's important to note. The export to CSV functionality, which I kind of showed off earlier, is also really important to note, because all of the information that you're returning, so for example, these 325 fields or data points is exportable to CSV for you to then use in, let's say that you wanted to put it into Sheets, have it interacting with another tab in Google Sheets or Excel, and then using VLOOKUPs and things like that, or any formulas. That's something that's totally possible, but this is a really good way to help make sense of a lot of the data that exists in your Deputy account before it gets too messy in something like Excel, which is a lot more for the advanced users. Okay, so what we'll do in the Q&A is we'll maybe go through some hypotheticals and stuff like that, but I'll quickly jump out. And before we do a deep dive into the questions that you might have for us, I'll show you another kind of report that we have. It's obviously not on this list of reports here, but it can be a very important data set for you to use for reporting activities. And this is a new feature that we've introduced that's really awesome, actually. It's called the custom exporter. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pick a data set that has some good, meaningful timesheets for us to query. Let's just assume that we've got these 4 items here, and we want to export them and create a report over. So again, I kind of just breezed over that. So again, we pick the person, we export the selected items, and then we're going to use this really awesome new feature that we've got called the custom payroll export. As you can see, it's beta, but it's got a lot to offer. So firstly is you pick the file name. So what it's done is it's kind of picked one for us, which is based on a date range. In the preview, it's showing all of those data points or the fields in the CSV that we're about to generate. But before we generate it, I'll just show you how cool it is. So you can search the data source that you're looking for, and it will do its best to return it. But I'll quickly show you some of the ones that exist. It's a little bit like the report builder, where you can add the fields that exist in a timesheet file. So first name, last name, you know, that basic stuff, but then you've got timesheet, such as the timesheet total hours, the area name or the area codes, if you've got really complicated reporting requirements that need this information captured, if you've got it in Deputy, you can basically get this custom payroll exporter to spit it out. So if we can make it really, really heavy in its data set, or we can make it quite light. That on the left-hand side are all the possible custom fields. You can add your own custom fields, which is even cooler. Let's remove it for now, but it's basically free text, allows you to create a data point that you can then use later on. And on this kind of more right-hand side of the modal here is all of the fields that I currently have preloaded into this export file that I'm trying to create. So as you can see, it's got a lot of really cool stuff like the payroll export code, timesheet area, that kind of stuff. If I go to export and save, it's going to spend a second thinking. It's creating the file for us. It gives us a prompt to download the file. As you can see, there's the file name that we specified earlier, and we've got it here. So let's go here. Let's create a new one. Okay, we'll go to upload. 1 second. And there we go. So we have the payroll ID or the name. They're typically the same. If you have a more complicated payroll platform, sometimes that payroll ID is like a number or something like that. These are the Deputy data points, which is like the display name and things like that. Timesheet data, like we've got everything that we really wanted out of the report, and we were able to kind of customize this. The reason why this is amazing is because you can then start to think about some of the reports that are possible with more advanced reporting tools that you can build yourself. If you want to add multiple tabs to this spreadsheet, for example, and then do VLOOKUPs to show certain areas that people work in and how much they've been costing and all that kind of stuff, then you can do so because you've got the data that Deputy was able to kind of sort out for you and then put it into a CSV file. Yeah, this is one of the cooler things that we've done recently, and I think it has huge impacts for customers who have more advanced requirements that the reporting is a little bit basic in itself. The exporter is pretty awesome at doing that. Okay, so let me jump back into Tony's Flowers. I've done a quick overview. With the time remaining, what I think we should do is probably get the Q&A session going. So let's go back to here and we'll do a quick little summary of what we covered. So we did the timesheet and leave summaries, we did contact tracing, we did the report builder, and we did some time saving, but I showed you a few more of the advanced features that we've got coming as well, which is cool. Let's get into the, oh yeah, sorry. And for the next steps, we're going to do the Q&A, obviously. We've got a quick poll coming up as well. And we'll have a new topic coming out soon. Sneaking suspicion that it's going to be on pay rates and stuff like that. So that's pretty exciting. So that's just a little heads up, and we'll probably do that sometime in October.
Cool. Thank you very much, Sam. We did get a lot of good questions, so let's jump straight into it. First of all, I think two things that came up over and over again. So the first question was, can we have a recording of this session? Quite a few people asked this. So yes, we will publish a recording together with all the answers to the questions, even the questions that we will not address now or that haven't been addressed in the Q&A part of the Zoom meeting. So we will publish this in the coming days. So we don't have a direct date for this yet, but we will publish it in the coming days once we have all the answers and the recording ready, and then we'll let everyone know. Then quite a few people asked about the sales data. So about how to put the sales data into their deputy account. So maybe Sam, if we can go back into the account
Sure.
and show this in the schedule. With that said, we will touch on something fairly new now that possibly not all attendees have in their account yet. It's called Business Insights, which you can see here on the left side of our test account underneath the metrics button. You might not see that in your account yet, and this is not fully rolled out to all of our customers yet, but will be in the coming weeks. And we're also planning to have a webinar just about this topic. So if you're one of those people who answered a question in the Q&A and I answered it with, we will cover this in a future topic, in a future webinar, we actually will. But just for a basic idea, this is where you can put sales data in, and you can put in a manager forecast in here and also actual sales. I think, Sam, we should maybe show just quickly that difference here in the sales data. So if we click on edit report, correct. And then as you can see here, we have the deputy forecast. Sam just clicked on the actuals. We have underneath edit sales where it says deputy forecast. That is our system giving you the forecast. So we will, obviously we learn from the more data and the longer you put data into deputy, the better the system will get at forecasting. And then under manager forecast, you can put in your forecast for the next week or fortnight or month, whatever you've chosen at the top. We're just looking at a week right now. You can put in the totals for the whole day under total, or you can put that in by the hour. So if you put in, like Sam just did, 400 as a total, it will actually put in whatever your opening hours are. Hours are 9 to 5. So it actually puts in, divides the $400 by your opening hours and puts that amount in for every hour.
And this is like a kind of a basic division of that total. But obviously, if you want to be super specific, you might be like, well, we've only got small expectations of the early hours of the morning. But, when it gets closer, that's when it really starts to ramp up. And that's when that's when you can edit those yourself, or you can rely on an integration with something like Counter or other point of sale services to dictate this data for you rather than having to type it in.
Correct. And we another very cool feature about this is if you, for example, have those sales, either the forecast or the actuals in a CSV file, you can actually just copy that out of an Excel sheet or a Google sheet and input, and paste it into this this window.
Yeah, you can use the importer wizard. Awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I think that was that. That was probably when we went through the timesheets versus. Actually, maybe we should go back to that one, and then we can show.
Report? Yeah. Let's make sure I got the actuals in there. So what I'll do is I'll do it for that time period.
Yeah, perfect. So we can actually see it. That's good. Cool. On the right side, what Sam is just doing, by the way, would be the time frame, the right time frame.
Ooh, high expectations of Wednesday.
Yeah, busy Wednesday.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, did that. All right. Awesome. Oop.
Perfect. I just see that one person just asked, sorry, the sales bed under schedule, I can't find it in mine. So two reasons for that. It could be that, as I said, we didn't roll this out to all of our customer base yet. I think it is about 50% of the customers. We're doing a little bit of A and B testing there, but it will be rolled out within the next couple of weeks to everyone. So if you...
Yeah.
Correct. So if you can't see this on the left side, first of all, also make sure you press the stats button. So if you, actually, Sam, could you quickly press on the stats button before we do that? Just to show people.
Also, I was just going to quickly say, if you can't see it on the left-hand side like that, just go to options and see if you've got the enter sales button. That might be where it's also hiding as well.
Correct. That's where it used to be before, or that's where it is if you can't see the business insights. But yeah, make sure you have the stats button pressed so that it is actually extended and will show you the view business insights button on the left. Cool.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go back to the reports.
Perfect.
Very cool. We want the previous month.
Somebody said, I'm just wondering if you can see my questions. Yes, we can actually see all of the questions. We will answer all of them. There's usually more that are coming in that we can actually answer during the session. So look out for when we publish the recording, and in there we will always have all the questions. One of the reasons why it takes so long is actually because we also want to answer every single question. Cool. Yes, and then in here, you see the sales.
It is because, yeah, we were in admin.
Which is we've put it all in admin, which is probably not the best example for this, but yes, that is all those questions came in when we're actually talking about this report. So that's where you can put in the sales data in order to show up in this report. Cool. I think another question was, I can't see the reports. How can I get access to this?
Yeah.
Maybe do you have the help article open for the access levels?
I do.
Amazing.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
Yeah, so the reason why you could not see the reports is because you might be on an access level that doesn't have access to the reports, which is, for example, a supervisor or an employee. As a supervisor, you can, approve timesheets, create schedules, etc., but you don't have access to the reports. If you need to have access to the reports, please make sure to, contact your system administrator, because they can change your access level and can, upgrade you to a location manager. Also make sure, or another reason why you potentially couldn't see it is if you're not on a premium plan, but if you're on a, scheduling only or a timesheet only plan. So please make sure you're on a premium plan with us, on a premium subscription, and you are either a location manager or a system administrator, and then you would have access to all of the reports that we looked at today. Cool. Then there were a few questions regarding the employee journal. And a question that came in a few times is, do my staff members see these notes? The answer is no. In the employee journal is something that only managers can see. And this is not just in the reports, but actually also in the timesheet section or in individual employees' profile. If you put a journal entry in there, only people with manager duties like supervisors, location managers, system administrators can see those journal entries. The individual employee can't see them. Which was
I might just also go to timesheet.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, let's show that in timesheets as well. That's a good,
very
good idea.
We had a timesheet here, and this is already an approved timesheet. So obviously, if you need to, this locks timesheets in. So to add a journal entry, you need to unlock it, and to unlock it, you unapprove the time, unapprove the pay. And what we'll see here is this is the note that we already had in there earlier. Yeah. This is the positive or negative, and leaving it optional. Leaving it as an optional is obviously the neutral function, and then you submit it. You can add multiple lines onto it as well to create new data points to query in the journal report later on. And then once you're happy with it, you just go ahead and hit approve and next, or approve and go ahead and add another note.
Correct. And just to repeat, it's only managers, so supervisors, location managers, and system administrators. The individual employee cannot see that. And regarding that, can employees or supervisors see the sales data? Maybe if we can go back to access levels.
Yeah, sure.
Just to show it again. So no, sales data can only be seen by location managers and system administrators. So usually what I tell clients in like onboardings or something is that the two right access levels on your screen right now, location managers and system administrators, are the ones that can see pay rates, sales data, basically dollar amounts. So only location managers and system administrators can see that. Employees and supervisors can't. That's why they have no access to, for example, view employee costs. And quite frankly, that's also the reason why they don't have access to the report section, because there are, sales data and pay rates in there. That's why they can't access that. Cool. Then let's have a quick look. So I think we should also show the access to the data exporter, because we did mention it.
Oh yeah,
But
here's
I
another one I
didn't
prepared
show
earlier. So this would be some content that we provide in the follow-up, because we have a really good guide on how the exporter works. It's basically a way of pulling every single data point that exists in your deputy account out of the account and putting it into a CSV function or form or file, in case you need to do anything else with it. So it's because not all of the reports that we have in the report dashboard you'll see are natively exportable to CSV. Some of them have too many visual representations or complicated data points that won't allow for like a native CSV exporter. This allows you to, this exporter tool that we have allows you to just pull everything that you have in your deputy account out and into a CSV file for you to do whatever you need to with.
Correct. And I think maybe if we probably one more is this basically gives you access to the raw data of your account in the back end of the system. And there's no limitation there, as we when we talked about or when Sam talked about the report builder, and that there is this 20,000 data point limitation. This data exporter doesn't have that limitation. The only thing is you do need to use this particular link for it. Maybe Sam, you can just copy the link and put it in. We don't have to connect it to the account, but just to show people how that would be done. So all you would do is press connect with deputy there. Then it will ask you for, it has to be system administrator, right? It will ask you for your username and your password. You press login, and then it's literally connected to your deputy account and will ask you in there. If you go back to the article, right, there was some screenshots underneath it.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Correct. It will show you, if you're connected to multiple deputy accounts, it will ask you which one you want to choose. Which you see there on that screenshot. And then if you go a little further down, it will show you the data sources that you can choose. And then you can press start export. And what happens is the system will send you a CSV file per email. So it will generate that for you and will send it to you per email. It's very important that a system administrator does that.
And the reason why it's not too built into the premium accounts is because it is raw data. So the file that you get is not exactly intuitive to read or understand. It's just raw data. So again, it's more so for the power users to then start to do things in other reporting apps to create some order and sense out of the chaos of data that you get sent to you over email. But yeah, we'll link this. We'll link this great support document to everyone in the follow-up.
Cool. Then I also want to mention, because quite a few people ask questions about pay rates or the zero integration or integrations in general. Okay. As you know, a few resources for that under our help portal, help.deputy.com. Which you can just see up there. If you type in training, for example, in there, it will show you a list of all, or you can click on the Learning Center actually at the top. It will show you all the past training sessions that we've did. One was on scheduling, timesheets. We did one on the zero integration, leave in general, and all those things. So that's a very good resource. Otherwise, you can also use this help portal and type in if you have a question, like for example, counter or something like that, if you have an issue with a counter integration, etc. So use that resource. If that doesn't answer your question, please feel free to reach out to our 24/7 support chat, which you can see on the right bottom side of your deputy account. Now, one question that I found pretty good as well is someone asked about basically in the report builder running or filtering by only one employee. So I think we should quickly show the filter option in the report builder. If we, I don't know, would you want to use timesheets? Oh, okay.
Just use this existing one.
Oh, I used the existing one.
And then
perfect.
Edit, and then.
Correct. So underneath, oh yeah, we need to make sure that the name is in there. So I have a display name. Just want to go on filter.
Yeah.
Perfect. Correct. So this is how you would filter if you only want to see one employee. As we said before, make sure that, especially if you have a big data set, make sure that the first filter you always use is a date filter, right? Because you want to make sure that you're looking at the right date time frame, right? So just make sure that if you want to look at, let's say, all the timesheets for one employee last month, make sure you first set the filter for the date range, which was last month, and then you set a filter for that one employee, which Sam now has done. Cool. Actually, do as we say, not as we do.
The reason, for example, with this report, I asked it to give me everything that contains Felix, and then another one which was make sure you leave Felix out, and then it did both. As you can see.
We would also have to say, if you look at this next to filter where it says 293 results, so we're obviously far away from 20,000, and this is the test account that is not that doesn't have that much data in it. If the data limit is reached, please always make sure you use the date range as the first filter before you do anything else, because you do want it to show you the right data.
Yeah, I'd say typically when you hit that edge case scenario that I spoke about of having 20,000, that's when people are doing yearly reports, and then because then their date range is obviously a year, and then it's returning all that information associated with that whole 365 days. Obviously, a lot of data points, and can easily get to 20,000. So if it does, just have that in mind, that if you're searching for something and it's outside of that and you can't quite find it, that's probably the reason.
Correct. Cool. And with that said, we have 3 more minutes left. So that was basically our, training session about reporting. And we would like to run a little poll at the end. So let's hope, can you get this up? Awesome. Perfect. So yeah, please fill this out. It's going to help us a lot, just in general, how we perform today, and also for future training sessions. And yeah, just let us know, give us a little feedback if you can. And then we wish you a nice rest of the day and a good end to this week, and see you guys in the future.
Thanks, everyone. Looking forward to the next session.
Thank you very much.